and just practically asking who of you knows weather.com. Okay, and who uses us? Quite a bit less. In the German-speaking market, we are the market leader in business-to-consumer weather, and I tried sort of in my quick talk. I try to show you a bit what we do and what we try to do with data products. So I try not to speak about weather forecasting and how we do the publishing, but what we do with weather data. And just a bit about weather.com. So typically in the German market we are quite known. So we have a brand awareness of 93%. That's really huge. We are more than 50 employees. We belong to ProSieben Group, and we share sort of resources with ProSieben Group. We are at 3 locations. We have a development center in Berlin. We have sales and tech in Constance. We have our editorial team and our TV production in Munich in Parkstadt Schwabing, if anybody wants to visit us. We are sort of with the weather.com brand. We are on desktop, iOS, Android. We have to kill the WhatsApp bot now, given the changing regulations. We are on Apple TV. And we have a ski brand, Snow Authority, which we try to inform about the snow. And just to give a number, we have a reach which typically peaks in summertime of 20 million unique users, so that makes us a true mass medium in a world where there is very few mass media remaining. And that's, I mean, the media sector is fragmenting, and with 20 million that we reach typically in June, July, August, we are attracting a lot of the German speakers. And then a bit about just about our structure. And so this is what I just spoke about. That's what we are known for. You often don't know that we are behind it. We serve with weather productions in a lot of well-known German-speaking media. So we do the weather for FAZ, which is sort of the leading media in Germany. We do for the ProSieben Group in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland all TV weather. We do it also for Axel Springer and for Web.de. And we do radio and sort of everything sort of that is done with weather production. So if you hear SWR, you will hear our studio people doing that from 6 a.m. in the morning. And this is sort of what I will speak about now. We have always served customers with an API. So even in the Lufthansa data lake, they are querying also our API. They are querying a lot of weather APIs, not only ours, but they're also querying ours. And what we try to do here now is just to do a lot more than just serving via API, because we are, and that's sort of what I try to speak about, is what we try, how we think about weather, and I hope you take home with this what you could yourself do with it, with us or without us. That's really just to try to do a bit of education, what you can do with weather. And by just querying an API, a data problem is not solved. You just get raw data, and then you just, what do you do with the raw data? And so this is why we do data, but we also do weather analytics. And what we try to do is we try to help to optimize using weather data. And just showing that weather matters, that is shown from a webcam. We have a lot of webcams on our site. This is the one from Ludwig Beck, just 500 meters from here. And if you see on the same hour, same weekday, rain, not rain, you really see the massive weather difference. So it's obvious that weather changes. This morning with rain, more people were in the subway than the last days. You immediately see that there's a weather impact. And how we sort of theoretically think about weather, so we as a media company, we always think about the AIDA funnel, awareness, interest, desire, action. So typical marketing thinking. All along this consumer funnel, weather impacts. So you can expect a bit of snow on the weekend. It will be getting colder. So probably that's good for the Christkindlesmarket and the awareness of chocolate cakes. So this is probably running here. you would change maybe your search behavior, your media behavior. So when the first snow comes, you will then think, okay, I still need to change the tires, or I want to go to a ski resort. And then it actually can then, in a store, can make decisions. And you can then actually act. So we have analyzed that you see conversion rates differ based on weather. So that's just how we think about it from a sort of consumer perspective. And from a business perspective, well, you see these nice quotes in German media. I left this in German because it was in German media, but all those are publicly listed companies. Every one of you knows Zalando. Zalando last year did a profit warning, and they argumented it was the 2018 hot summer. And so apparently, even fast-growing Zalando had a weather impact of 2018. So, and then there is an effect, and the left side shows the summer 2018, August to 2017, and just average month temperatures, and you see 2018 was a very warm year, and from a climate perspective, a horrible year. So obviously it has a business impact, and just to give you an idea along a typical value chain, how we think about it, what you can do with weather. Sort of you can adapt your planning by doing forecasting using weather, depending on your business. So some things that are run smoothly, like an atom plant, that is probably not weather dependent, but the power consumption is weather dependent, and you can do forecasting on this. You can use it to source differently, given that some products react stronger or less strong to weather. You can then use it in operational dispositions. You can use it for marketing. You can use it then for CRM actions. You can do it on the point of sale for price changes, and then you can at the end also use it to control, because if somebody at Zalando says, well, there was a weather impact, and this is then a business argument in controlling data, you would like to get the weather effect out so that you know what actually happened, and if weather sort of overruns it, you don't really know what happened. So that's just the way sort of we think about it, and what we then do in this thing, sort of we sit sort of on this type of data. So some clients share with us data, or there is panel data, so that we can work on this data. We sit on weather data, location data, and also audience data that you wrote, that you just spoke about, and that requires consent. And then there's lots of metadata that you can think of, from calendar data, holidays. If you use geographical data, you need a lot of geo-socio-demographics, a lot of location-based data. So we do some magic here, which we call big data,
Thanks.
And then sort of we try to apply it then to certain products. That's just what we try to do, sort of just applications that we focus on. So we are not doing any airplane steering for Lufthansa. That is something that's done publicly, but sort of we focus on sort of consumer markets. So we try to help in optimizing media with weather. We calculate weather effects out. We call this baselining, so taking weather effects out, just like you take exchange rates effects out, so just taking effects out. With forecasting, we try to put weather into it. And then with geo insights, we try to provide information about the geodata that our customers consent to us. If you use us, you typically you center sort of a map, you want the warnings to your location, and based on this data, we can also provide some aggregated statistical information of what happens. So that's sort of what we do. And I tried to show quickly just two products so that you have an idea how a pipeline is and how it can work. So Forecast Optimizer. So the situation is a bakery. We all know bakeries, and nowadays bakeries are not. Nowadays you typically have 30 to 50 outlets. In mid-sized bakeries, huge German chains have 500 and more outlets. So they do sort of central production, and then a lot of outlets that they have to serve, and they need to know what happens in every outlet on every day. So they need planning for this. And currently, sort of, they have done autoregressive models. So they said in the last 4 Thursdays I sold this many pretzels, and then I think the next stage I should sell this many. So next Thursday I should sell this many pretzels. Obviously, you can improve such models with weather, because we already know it's getting colder on the weekend, or we already know there is a holiday. So what we do here is we do weather-based forecasting with the time horizon that a weather forecast permits. And that this actually is the case. This is just showing an example of apple cake, and this is sort of just sort of true data. So obviously apple cake is a seasonal product, and typically people buy cake more on weekends when they have a bit more time. So during the week people don't consume that much apple cake. So there's a lot of reasons how data could look like, but if you then look on rainfall and on a year, then you see there is a negative effect. The more rain, the less apple cake. So, and this applies for other products as well. So that's just how it looks like, and what we then practically do, sort of we have a sort of a pipeline that says we take data from systems. There's different systems in this industry. We have to learn there a lot about those different connectors, and not all bakeries are rich enough to buy SAP. Sort of what we do is we take this data, we put this into a learning pipeline. So we do a model that refreshes then every day, and that provides then back a forecast, and that then enters the business process that you then decide, okay, I combine those. There's a lot of thing happening then here business-wise, and to get a proper disposition. At the moment we do 300 bakeries here with roughly 25,000 forecasts a day here. Right, and that this actually works. I try to sort of to show how one can see this and to visualize this, because this machine learning thing just runs, and you then at the end this huge data sets, not all products are always there. The forecast is done, and you need then to visualize also what happens, and to then prove that weather-based forecasting does it. Just to selecting on one product, you would see if you do a forecast with weather and without weather, you see that on certain days there is then a change in the forecast due to weather, if you compare the forecast with and without. And then you need statistical metrics that tell you then a bit that this is actually a forecast improvement, and sort of here you can work on different sort of error calculations. We show here sort of the mean absolute error, and which we can show that based to the earlier model that was existing, we are reducing overall the error. There will still be errors. We still sometimes miscalculate, but on average the errors goes down by more than 10%. And what is sort of a nice effect sort of in our current customer data is that we are reducing the underestimation, because that is the loss of revenue. There is a lot of food waste, but bakers are more worried about the loss of revenue than the food waste, for obvious reasons. Right, and then how much time? Okay, good. Then another thing what you can do, we call media optimizer. And here just an example. Obviously water is a weather dependent product. In nice weather, so I think nobody needs to know this. All of you knew this. That if it's especially hot, Munich typically is 2 weeks in summer when it's really and sometimes it's end of July, sometimes it's early August. It changes a bit. This product is quite weather dependent, and that's sort of the moment that you make the sales. And what the trouble is, Germany is quite large, 1,000 kilometers length, 600 in width. It's not everywhere the same. And if you want to do a campaign, you would like to steer on weather, you would have to do for every city a different setup. And then the trouble is, you don't know precisely the trigger value. So is it now 1 degree more or 2 degree more that makes the change? And if you compare Munich and Hamburg, it is roughly always 10 degrees colder in summer than in Munich, just because Hamburg is close to the sea and Hamburg is just so far more north. So the trigger point then always also differs between Munich and Hamburg. So This is why weather, sort of if you just do flat, sort of if you sell winter tires, you can take it on the 0 line. That's easy then, because that's just on freezing temperature or the 5-degree recommendation. But for water, that's quite complicated. And water, there's a lot of large media customers behind that, like Nestlé or Danone, that do this and that would like to optimize on this. So just I try to give a motivation why this makes sense to advertise on weather and what the problems currently are. And this is just showing data. So we cooperate there with the GfK, which is a leading German consumer insights company that runs a panel. And if you look at GfK data, you can see that this year water consumption was a bit lower than last year, which is easily explainable given the difference in the weather this year to last year. Last year was really exceptionally hot. This year we had a very cold May. And this is such a thing that you can actually then see on weekly data. You can actually see that the water consumption changes over the year. So I'm showing here until half year. And you really see that not only Easter moved a bit, which always moves, 6 weeks, sort of there's a 6 weeks arrangement of Easter, and you can see sort of a difference in May. This May was really cold. So what we sort of practically do here as a pipeline, sort of we take this panel data and we get this data on a daily and on a geographical level and sort of as much as you can get panel data to the granular ground. And then we map our weather data to it and calendar data to it, and then you get, that went out a bit small here, so if you get a certain function that gives you, sort of that's a weather reaction function, and then we put this reaction function to an index, and then we put this index to systems, and that can be any ad tech system that the customer uses. And at the end of the day then it would show on an advertising, every surface that you can advertise on in a digital way that runs from, in the subways, this can be booked digitally nowadays. It can work on our apps, it can work on our website. Also addressable TV you can target digitally. So that's where we serve it. And just to show the difference in the index, so we are showing here the 10th of June to the 16th of June, and as we show here 5-degree brackets of temperature. So you really see that it differs a bit across those days, the weather on the temperature. And below here you see our water index and our sports drinks index. The index looks different, and that's just because the water is also a product which has a certain, you stock up on water. You just don't, you buy some things spot and some things you spot up. So there's also an expectation in the weather why you buy earlier or you buy later. And this is sort of what the index shows. So a plain booking on a temperature would not serve the client just as well. And we have tested this, and we've tested this for a brand, and then you do an A/B test and say half of the campaign sort of just goes flat, and the other half of the campaign runs with targeting, and then you can see that it actually does an uplift, and it's a quite significant uplift for display media. So to be sort of, we've done this also for travel campaigns. Sort of this value, of course, differs by campaign and by creative and by platform you're on. But you're getting nice uplifts, and we're doing this also for travel hotels that are quite weather reliant, which we try to help to optimize Google spend, which is typically a big bracket of their spending. Right, so I'm trying to finish up sort of what we as a company sort of how we face it. So we we are coming from a publishing world, and a lot of my colleagues are very clever moderators and editors of news and video productions. If you look at it, judge it and tell us. But we try sort of to really venture into a data business there by serving customers with optimization and by putting us out a bit of the classical media space. And we are doing this also because we think we can do this because we have this knowledge of the weather, and we always discuss weather, but we also need to go out because the advertising market is quite a fluctuating market. Yeah, it is. It is also in our core, sort of in it, that we work with weather data. And just we see here sort of a merge of data science and weather that we are doing, and we try to educate customers that weather is a business factor. So that's sort of what we try to merge, and that also tells how we try to do a team setup. So a team setup, we don't have a huge B2B data team. We have we have 5 people, but we try to mix it a lot with our meteorologists, so that the weather knowledge of people that study meteorology go into development of true triggers. It is sort of just knowing a temperature function doesn't give a trigger. You want to create silent triggers out of weather data. And that's sort of where you need to bring these people together to actually discuss. Right, and I think I'm, then I just try to make transparent a bit sort of the challenges that we face. I mean, obviously we belong to a media company, to ProSiebenSat.1, and overall, of course, media is changing a lot at the moment, and a media company is typically not a data company. So that's sort of what we work on. To convince and also to persuade the value of this data. And then, of course, we have all sort of the challenges that come about in transforming to a big data company. So you want to take your core team along. You want to set up a very blended team that acts agile, because if you get new data, you never know beforehand. Other than for water, it's clear, but for a lot of things, you just don't know beforehand the exact effect. So you need to work in an agile way. Right, and we are entering new markets. I never thought that 5 years ago I would have never thought I would know about bakery ERP systems. So, and that is, but this is how it has to come into systems. It doesn't help to just speak about the weather. We do this and we have fun about this, but at the end of the day, the optimization comes through the system, and there's a lot in the systems happening. So that tells the challenges, and we are also hiring. Look on our job sites. Effectively, we have in the data area, we have a data science and data business development open, and in our development team, we have backend open, and we have app development open to speeden up more our features in our apps. So just to make this transparent, but look it up, and happy to answer any question on weather that you have. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.